How's it going, people? Welcome to United View and welcome back to another Tactical View player profile. This time we'll be looking at Manchester United's latest signing, Sofyan Amrabat, and what he can bring to the Manchester United midfield that it is currently really lacking. So, before any further ado, we'll have a quick look at the fantastic artwork here that Josh has done. That really is a fantastic screen. But unfortunately, we must press on with the show, and so we'll get rid of that and bring up the display from the Arsenal game. Now, so far this season, Manchester United have shown progress in different areas of the game compared with last season. Obviously, Erik ten Hag is trying to take a side that in big games had to adapt quite considerably and play very conservatively last season, to one now that is able to play their way into games, control games a little bit more by having the ball, and actually compete in those big games, particularly away from home. Now, against Arsenal, what we saw was that in the first phase, so really if you think about the game happening in United's third, United were much better at keeping hold of the ball, not being rushed, not just aimlessly hitting long balls as soon as they receive it, and they were a lot more patient at times. In the game before that, against Nottingham Forest, what you saw was that after the terrible, disastrous start from United, 2 goals down in 4 minutes, United were actually able for the rest of the game to keep the ball really high up the pitch and basically pen Forest in their defensive third of the pitch. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will probably spot that you've basically got 2/3, give or take, of the pitch that are highlighted that United have shown major progress in and good success. That's the defensive third and the attacking third. When we've got the ball in either of those areas and been able to keep it there, we have shown good things. However, football tactics, sometimes people assume that sort of the ball starts here and magically makes its way over here. Things happen, goal. Unfortunately, that is very much not the real world and not the way things work. So the issue for United at the moment is how we get the ball from this bit into this bit so that we can knit everything together and actually build a cohesive team, a cohesive attacking performance, and something that works for 90 minutes of any game, whether it's at Old Trafford, whether it's at Wembley, where the Champions League final is being held as well this season. Never know, we might make that, it's possible. But also even in those big away games. Now, the issue United had against Arsenal was that from this sort of defensive shape, when we had the ball in this area, we were able to bounce the ball into Casemiro or to Eriksen, but pretty much every time that ball would be passed straight back. So you have Lindelof on the ball here, let's say, or Onana on the ball. They'd feed it into Eriksen or Casemiro, who would drop in at a nice angle there to make sure their next pass is relatively easy. Ball would be played into their path. That bit's all really nice, but rather than playing forward, they'd just play it out to the fullback either side, invites the Arsenal player to come up to them, and then the ball will go backwards and just be played around. Now, that's a big step from last season because we would have just smashed it long and lost it straight away, but it's that missing link in between of what we do next. Now, there's 2 ways to get around this. The first way is that the player who's receiving it here turns on the ball, plays forward to one of the front 4 dropping in. Now, what Arsenal did to make that really difficult was that they sort of sat off a little bit here when United had the ball, but they were pressing with the front 6, really, front 4 or front 6. So it was Nketiah and Ødegaard, or sometimes Havertz would come and join this front 2 with Nketiah. Then you've got the wingers pressing quite high on the fullbacks, and then Rice and Havertz were quite good at locking off the central area, so that when Casemiro or Eriksen did receive, they were well marked, or if whichever one of them went in here, anyone that was dropping in was well followed by either the winger or a centre-back, or whichever one of Rice and Havertz hadn't followed the guy in. So it meant it was really difficult for United to actually be able to receive the ball here and then pass it forwards. So if you can't pass, the second option is carrying the ball. And this is what United fans and United in general have been screaming about for ages, and that is why Erik ten Hag was so desperate to bring in Frenkie de Jong. Now, if there's one thing Frenkie de Jong is fantastic at, it is his ball carrying. Really good because he's evasive. When there's a pressing player, he's got a particular Frenkie turn, basically his own sort of skill move that gets him out of pressure quite nicely. He's quite quick as well, able to hold off players and get up the pitch. And that is what United are missing, because when it's not possible to pass your way out of these situations, which it sometimes isn't, Eriksen tried his best, but Casemiro is not the best in those situations. He doesn't want to play in the half turn. Casemiro is best when the game's in front of him and he's facing play. Not really able to knit things together and be that link man in there for United. So, the bit that's missing is that ball-carrying midfielder, and to drive home that point and really show you the impact that that can have, we have this sequence here for the goal against Arsenal. Now, obviously there was a transition that took place before this, so it's not quite as pure as straight after the press, but as we said in the post-Arsenal tactical view, we used this sequence as well, and we said that the cameraman was an absolute disgrace and a cheat, because he was just showing us what was going on here in United's third or in the Arsenal third, rather than showing us the full pitch, which is what you need to see for a proper tactical analysis. And what you can see here is you've got the full pitch available. That's why we've used this example, and you can see three Arsenal players, the front three already out of the game because the ball's broken to Eriksen here. Odegaard's basically out of the game because he's side on there, not really able to do too much. He's sort of not really able to get any pressure on Eriksen. You've got a couple of players out of the game there as well. But at this moment, Eriksen somehow finds it within himself to carry the ball up the pitch. And you can see there, Ben White has jumped to support the press, leaving Rashford potentially in some space with his arm up there, wanting the ball. So Eriksen receives the ball there, drives up the pitch with the ball, and this is what United were missing. Somebody to drive up the pitch and exploit that space between the Arsenal front six and the back four. Because Arsenal left that space there because they were worried, the back four were worried about Rashford's pace and the threat in behind. Front six were worried about sort of United in that first phase there, trying to stop us playing through. But if you can have somebody dropping in or somebody carrying the ball, that is what links that first phase to that final phase. And as you can see, as we roll on the move there, Eriksen on the ball, slides that ball through to Rashford. I'm sure you've all watched this particular sequence back and the goal back about 100 million times by now, because it was fantastic. And that is really the area that Sofyan Amrabat brings something United don't currently have in Eriksen and Casemiro. Eriksen's a great passer, but Casemiro isn't really in there for his in-possession stuff, and we don't have a ball carrier at this moment in time, unless you never know, unless Eriksen's had a heart transplant that we don't know about, and that's why he's doing that sort of stuff. You never know, maybe that's what's happened. Maybe he will turn into prime... I don't really know how to describe it. Prime... Who's a good midfielder that Eriksen there seems like? Let me know in the comments down below. Who has that Eriksen carry reminded you of? We'll come back to that anyway. So on to Sofyan Amrabat and his stats, because I think this can give us a really good picture of what he does and what he doesn't do, and more importantly, where he can fit into the United team, because there's been some discussion about whether he plays as a 6 in place of Casemiro, whether he plays as an 8 in place of Mount or Eriksen, or whether he plays alongside Casemiro and United go to a 4-2-3-1. So the first thing on the left here, you've got sort of his standard stats, nothing. This is sort of a mishmash of everything. We'll look at it in more detail as we go on. But the first thing to see is the goal contribution type stuff and his shooting. So this sort of stuff at the top here. You can see he's not really one to get forward much. These stats are pretty poor in terms of how much he delivers in the final third. In fact, zeros all round. So doesn't take pens, doesn't really score, doesn't really get many assists. So that straight away tells you, setting alarm bells ringing in terms of him potentially being an 8, in that he doesn't really get forward to that great effect. So that's possibly a red flag there. Things to look at here, got progressive carries, progressive passing, doing pretty well there. And progressive passes received. Now, underrated stat, because this can tell you a lot about where a midfielder plays on the pitch. Progressive passes received means he's got to receive a progressive pass, you've got to be at least 10 yards in front of somebody so that they can pass the ball forwards to you in a progressive manner. So the fact that he doesn't receive many of those tells you how he positions himself on the pitch, in that he likes to come deep and collect the ball rather than receiving the pass on the half turn. Again, another potential issue in terms of using Amrabat as an 8. So that's something to bear in mind. As we said to start with, this is the more detailed breakdown in terms of the shooting stats. Nothing to write home about there. So in terms of playing him as an 8 for that reason, this should be setting alarm bells going. So if you're viewing Amrabat as the solution to that 8, maybe you might want to think again. Now, what we've got here on this particular screen is the passing stats. And you can see from the amount of green, things are looking a lot better here. So in terms of pass types, live ball passes, 99th percentile in compared against midfielders. So you can see he really likes to get on the ball, really likes to pass it, and he does a lot of that in open play rather than being necessarily a dead ball specialist, although he does take a fair few free kicks himself as well. In terms of the style and the type of passes, again, not that many through balls there. So that should be sending alarm bells again that he's not the one to be really creative in that team, but the switches is nice. So this tells you again that rather than passing forward and looking to break lines, he does break lines, as you can see from the right side with the progressive passes and that sort of stuff. But in terms of creating chances through balls, not really his game. Switches is a good sign though. He's able to switch the play, which is something that United have done to good effect at times, but probably not frequently enough thus far this season, so that's a good sign there. Corner kicks, wouldn't worry about that. Passes completed again. Relatively high volume passer, which is a good sign again. Now, in terms of that's his pass types. In terms of his passing itself, you can see, again, completes a lot of passes. Progressive passing distance is very good, very high up on the stats there, which tells you he does move the ball forward when he comes deep. But at the same time, you remember, if you come deep enough on the football pitch, there's not really anywhere else you can play the ball other than forward. So you would expect a lot of progressive passes, but we do get that. So I hope and I think this is giving you that steer in terms of Amrabat's position and where he should play for United. Key passes is okay, but nothing special. Expected assists, again, okay, but nothing special. But this should be giving you the vision and the idea that Amrabat is not by any stretch an attacking 8. That's not the role you want to see him in. He prefers to receive the ball deeper, pass it forward, carry it forward, as we'll see, and on occasion, he can move the ball into the penalty area with a pass or a cross. Progressive passes, as we've said, decent, and he's decent enough for all types of passes, short, medium and long. However, I will say the long passes thing is a bit deceptive. I don't think he's quite got the power in his legs to execute switches as well as he needs to all the time. And in terms of his angle biases, where he prefers to play, he's a little bit similar to Rice in that he's very right foot dominant, and he'll look to sort of set himself up on that left half of the pitch a little bit more so that he can have the natural angles to play forward on the right rather than passing. If you start on the right side and you want to curve the ball outside with your right foot, you're basically just hitting the winger every time. So he will look to position himself on the left side, left half of the pitch a little bit more for that reason. In terms of defending attributes, we'll leave the goal and shot creation stuff there. Although, to be fair, shot creation does look okay in that, nothing that impressive. But defensive side, this is what we want to highlight here. Tackles in the middle third of the pitch. Really impressive there. Percentage of dribblers tackled, he's pretty good at doing that. Challenges lost, he doesn't lose too many either. Now, what this tells you is that Sofyan Amrabat is very, very good in the counter press. Specifically in the middle third, he locks on really, really quickly when his team loses the ball in transition, straight on top of whoever he needs to be, and that will improve United's rest defence massively. One of the biggest issues United have had in transition so far this season is that players aren't positioning themselves properly. You've got players diving in constantly when they shouldn't be, and the diving in comes from two things. Firstly, it's poor technique, but also secondly, it comes from poor positioning, meaning that rather than being right next to the guy that you've anticipated is going to receive the ball, you've got to sprint 2 or 3 yards, then you think, right, I'm just going to stick a leg out because I'm not getting there quick enough. So Amrabat's positioning is good, he's quick across the ground, so he's able to get there quickly, and he doesn't dive in that much, hence he doesn't lose too many challenges there. Interception's good as well, highlights again his ability to cover ground, which is important for United in midfield. And I think this is giving you the overall picture of Amrabat. Tackles one as well, relatively decent. So I think the picture that this is painting is that this is somebody who, in possession, likes to sit deep, likes to collect the ball from the back, likes to carry it forward, as we can see here with the possession stats. You can see carries, 99th percentile, boom. That wasn't quite as dramatic as it was supposed to be because the pen wasn't there, but we'll gloss over that. Carries, carrying distance, progressive carrying distance, 99th percentile for all of those things. That is exactly what United need. It's what United are missing, someone that can come deep, collect the ball off the defenders and drive forwards up the pitch. Make use of that space between the back unit and the front unit if a defending team are allowing us that space. And what that will mean is that, for example, in the Arsenal game, if you've got players that can carry the ball forward, it will mean the defence have to commit to the press with the front six, which Arsenal weren't really doing. And what that then means is that when Onana or anybody else wants to play that long ball over the top, there's even more space in behind to exploit that. So that gives United the ability to not just be stronger at playing through the thirds and playing through the lines, but also it will improve United's play when we do go over the press as well. And that is where you get the best transition team in the world that Erik ten Hag is talking about. So this is the missing link, that ball carrying there, which is exactly what we want to see. You can see again, times tackled during take on is very low for Onana, good percentile there. And the amount he's tackled percentage-wise, is pretty good as well. So that tells you as is his successful take-on percentage. So he doesn't really lose the ball doing it. So you compare it to someone like Mason Mount, who's reasonably able to do it at times, drop deep and carry the ball forward. But he's not the best in pressure situations and can lose the ball when he comes the wrong side or towards the defenders rather than receiving inside the opposition block. So I would say that's another particular attribute of Sofyan Amrabat that's really important. And the final thing to touch on here, miscellaneous stats, ball recoveries is fantastic, highlights his ability to retain possession, aerially not the best, so not really going to help. That's one area where Casemiro does have the advantage. So overall, what I hope you've learned from this video is that Amrabat realistically is going to play as a 6 for Manchester United. If Casemiro doesn't sort his game out, it could be a straight swap for him, but if he comes in for Eriksen instead, it's likely to be a double 6 with Casemiro. For me, Amrabat's best position will be bringing him straight in, so you play a midfield of Amrabat sitting, Eriksen in front and Bruno in front of that. That way you've got carrying, you've got passing, and you've got creativity from Bruno Fernandes. For me, that's United's best midfield, suits the attributes of the players the best, but that is why Erik ten Hag has brought in Sofyan Amrabat. Hope you've enjoyed watching this show. Let me know what you're looking forward to with Amrabat, what you're concerned about down below in the comments, and we'll see you again very soon on United View.